prove it, you got to keep your mouth shut. And they have simply thrown that whole basin of water with the baby out the window. They just don't care. In their minds, they've won, and anything they do to celebrate or to ridicule those who they have been triumphant over, they're the worst bunch of sore winners I've ever seen. They just will not let up. And they can't say, okay, we won, let's get on with running the country. Even if everything's still in the middle of being debated, or there's legal challenges going on, I think they have till December 8th to make a final declaration about who the president is. They could say, well, let's just bide our time and see what happens, and after that we'll have a party, and that'll be the end of it. We'll get back to running the country. They're not interested in that. They want to grind their heel down on the throats of anybody who happen to vote the other way, no matter who they are or what they are. They won't recognize the fact that amongst the racial demographics, the Latinos, the blacks, and there was a third one, Asians, Trump had double-digit increases back in 2016. They're not going to learn any lessons from that. They won, and that's it. And boy, are they glad they won, because we got rid of that Trump guy. And it's like, okay, so now what? And I don't think they have an answer for that.
Well, but you see, I'm not even frankly there yet. I certainly, as I keep telling people, at the end of the day, I don't have a dog in this hunt, okay? I don't have a horse in this race. I'm here in Canada. They're going to decide down in the United States who their president is, and that's their business, okay? I'm not going to say it has no ramifications here in Canada. Of course I think it does, but ultimately it's their decision, for better or for worse. So they're going to make their decision, and that's the end of it. But just as an observer as an outside observer, setting aside all of the things that you've just articulated, I just want to get back to the topic of the how profoundly self-deceiving some of these people are. I mean, when they say there's no evidence, I mean, yes, clearly there is evidence. Again, to what degree that evidence, any fraud that may have occurred, is going to affect the outcome of the election, who knows? I don't know. But to say that there is no evidence of voter fraud in this election, it's just manifestly untrue. And you have to be willfully blind. You have to be prepared to look at it and say, I don't care. I'm going to lie about it. And like the Whoopi Goldberg example, okay? Is Whoopi Goldberg a liar? Well, at first glance, you'd have to say she is, because the way she portrayed her own personal, and not to mention the Democratic reaction to the election of Donald Trump 4 years ago, is just demonstrably untrue. But does she believe it? Is there something more? Are we talking about some kind of a deeper psychological, emotional pathology here at play? I don't know, but it just
maybe
for me answer, it just doesn't Joseph, compute.
If I can just jump in on that,
anytime you want.
Maybe the answer lies in the state of California. If you look, there is no more socialistic state in the United States right now than California is. It is an absolute, utter disaster. And it's because of years of socialistic governance and turning a blind eye to real problems and focusing on I don't want to say systemic. There's the fuzzy feel-good ones. Things that make you feel better but don't actually accomplish anything has been the hallmark of California for quite a while. And when you look at where a lot of these people who make these kind of claims, like the Goldbergs and like the different actors who have come out and said pretty amazingly stupid things, you have to ask yourself, where did all this come from? And I think it's from a culture that has been nurtured for 20 years or more, where people get put in these positions. They don't, take an actor. He thinks, let's take Robert De Niro as an example. Okay, Robert De Niro hates Trump with an unbridled passion, has hated him ever since he got elected, and has made no bones about it. But his opinion doesn't matter because he's just an actor. He's very good at remembering lines and reciting them in a way the director likes. That's what actors do. So he thinks, because everybody knows him, that his opinion matters more than somebody they don't know, when his political opinion doesn't mean a hill of beans compared to yours or mine, because he doesn't know any more than you or I do. So you have this culture where they've been fed this queen's jelly, if I can use that term, where they're royalty and they get to decide who the president's going to be. And when it doesn't go their way, they get angry. And then all of their common sense, if they had any, flows out their right ear, down their shoulder, and onto the ground. And you can see it in normal people leaving California in droves. They can't afford to live there anymore. It's not safe to live there anymore for a wide variety of reasons. And I think that's probably a good microcosm of what's going on in a lot of areas of the country that are a little more left-leaning than, let's say, Montana.
Well, that's an explanation, I guess. I'm not sure that it covers. I'm not sure how well it explains my observation. I'd even come down to, it's almost like a collective, as I said, some sort of a pathology. It's as though they've all taken the same drug, and we laugh about it, Nick. Okay, because it's kind of funny, but the reality is, no, they haven't all taken the same drug, and no, they're not all suffering from the same pathology. So what's really at play here? I don't know. It's deeply disturbing, and I think we see it mostly manifest itself in the United States, but I think that we have to be fair and we have to say it occurs here as well. And I'm going to go even now. I know I'm going to hear from my conservative friends about this, but I'm going to say it's actually to a degree on both sides. There's no question that you see this kind of behavior far more prevalent on the left than on the right, but I see it seeping into the right as well a little bit, it's got to be. I think we have to recognize that ultimately this is bad for our country. It's bad for any kind of an entity that is democratic in nature, because democracy depends on an informed and somewhat mature electorate to make mature, carefully considered, rational decisions. And, maybe that's just not possible in a democracy. I know many people who were writing about this, some very great thinkers, political thinkers in the around the time of the founding of the United States, when people were talking about democracy and how it would work, etc. There were some very great thinkers who thought, no, this experiment doesn't work very well. So I don't know, Nick. I don't know what the answer is. I would say this, okay. If you'd asked me on election night whether I thought Trump was going to win, I would have said yes. If you asked me on the morning after the election whether Trump is going to win, I would have said no. If you asked me any time between then and now, I would have said probably not. But now I'm starting to think, I don't know if some of these results get overturned. And by the way, this is not new in the United States. Anybody who says there's no such thing as voter fraud in the United States, I mean, that's just manifestly it's demonstrably untrue.
Never lived in Chicago.
Well, there have been, and not just in Chicago, there have been several instances where actual elections have been overturned and they've had to have new elections. We never had to have it at the presidential level, but certainly there have been instances where the fraud has been great enough that the courts have ordered a new election. It's admittedly rare, but to say that it never happens is just untrue. Of course it happens. Nick, we're going to have to go for another break now. We're coming to the top of the hour. So, coming up, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get into a little bit of discussion about the new vaccine on COVID, the new COVID-19 vaccine, and some of the issues with respect to whether or not people are going to have to take it, and what is the criteria going to be for dispersal and use of the vaccine. So you won't want to miss that. Segment number 3 of the Nick and Joe Show for this week. We'll be back in a few minutes on the live show, and otherwise, catch you next time on the Nick and Joe Show here on ThinkRadio.ca.